Ma Ling and the Magic Paintbrush, written by Constance Zhu, read by Venkat. Once upon a time in ancient China, there was a boy named Ma Ling. He was an orphan. His parents had passed away when he was only little. So in order to survive, he chopped wood and cut grass. One thing about Ma Ling was that he was fascinated by the art of painting. But since he was very poor, he could not afford to buy a paintbrush and to practice painting. One day, when Ma Ling was walking past a school, there through the window, he saw a teacher painting a beautiful scenery with a brush. Ma Ling stood there for a long time in admiration of how the teacher painted. Without a second thought, he walked straight into the classroom saying, "Master, Master, I would really love to learn painting. Can you please teach me the art of painting?" The teacher looked disapprovingly at the shabby boy and sneered, saying, "What? A poor kid like you want to learn painting? You must be daydreaming. Go away." "Master, can I at least borrow a paintbrush from you so that I can practice?" Ma Ling asked. "Go away, boy!" screamed the teacher. Feeling disappointed, Ma Ling walked away quietly. Even though he was snubbed by an adult, he remained composed and calm. In his mind, he thought, I do not believe that a poor child is not good enough or is incapable of learning to paint. He was determined that he would learn to paint on his own. With a lot of positive attitude, he made use of every opportunity to practice his painting skills. When he was cutting grass beside the river, he would take a few moments to dip a reed into the water and used it to sketch pictures of fish on the rocks. Whilst he chopped wood in the forest, he would stop for a while to draw birds on the freshly cut surface of the trees. At night, when he returned home to his cave, he would use a piece of charcoal from his fire to sketch on the walls all the beautiful things he had seen during his hard working day. Ma Ling never gave up on his dream of learning how to paint. Day after day, month after month, year after year, he used every opportunity to draw and paint anything and everything he could find in order to practice and develop his artistic skills. If he could not find the physical means to draw or paint, then he would draw and paint pictures in his mind. Eventually, every inch of the walls of his cave was densely covered with his art. His spirit and soul was completely filled with his dreams. Even though he still did not have a paintbrush, Ma Ling was developing extraordinary skills. For instance, when he drew a hen on the ground by the entrance to his village, eagles hovered above. When he drew a black wolf at the foot of the mountain, cows and sheep ran away in fear. As an old saying goes, if a dream is pure and bright, it will come true no matter what. Similarly, something happened to Ma Ling that would change the rest of his life, thanks to his bright dreams. One day, Ma Ling was beginning to fall asleep. As he was thinking about how great it would be to have a paintbrush to work with, at that time, a brilliant, bright light suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Out of this intense light came a very kind voice saying, "Ma Ling, this is a magical paintbrush. Use it well." Ma Ling was awestruck. He could hardly breathe as he watched the magical paintbrush appear out of thin air, shimmering with golden light as it fell into his hand. Before Ma Ling could recollect his senses, the voice and the light had disappeared. Ma Ling woke from what he thought was a fantastic dream. He could not believe his eyes when he looked down and saw the glimmering and shimmering magical paintbrush actually in his hand. Very quickly, recovering from his astonishment, he started to use the brush to paint a bird. To his complete surprise, a real bird started to flap its wings and flew out of the painting into the sky. When he painted a fish, it started to wiggle its tail before leaping through the air and landing in the nearby river. Wow! The voice is correct. This indeed is a magical paintbrush. Wow! Bravo! Ma Ling leapt in joy. With his huge kind heart, Ma Ling decided to use this magical gift to help the poor people in his village. He painted things the villagers desperately needed. He painted a cow for the family that needed a cow, a stone mill for the family that needed a stone mill, and a water wheel for the family who did not have one. In turn, these families shared their new abundance of food and drink with others in their village. Thanks to Ma Ling, there was a sense of righteousness in the village. Unfortunately, such good things can lead to envy, which in turn can lead to wrongdoing. Very soon, the news about Ma Ling's magical paintbrush spread to a wealthy and greedy local landlord, who sent two of his bodyguards to bring Ma Ling to him. When the landlord met Ma Ling, the landlord ordered him to paint a mountain full of gold coins. Ma Ling was a very strong-hearted boy, and no matter how much the landlord threatened him, Ma Ling refused to obey the greedy landlord. The landlord became so angry with Ma Ling that he had him locked up in a stable without any food or water. The landlord ordered his bodyguards not to feed Ma Ling and make sure that he does not escape. It was a very cold winter that year. Outside the stable, the snow was several feet deep. The landlord thought that it was just a matter of time before the cold and hunger would make Ma Ling give in and paint the mountain of gold that he had demanded. After 2 days, the landlord decided that he would check on Ma Ling. As he approached the stable, he could smell the aroma of delicious food coming out of every crack in the stable's woodwork, and a red glow was visible from the cracks in the door. In a rage, the landlord flung the stable door wide open. He was shocked to see a very cheerful Ma Ling sitting comfortably eating piping hot Chinese pancakes by his side, and in a confusion, the landlord flung the stable door wide open. He was shocked to see a very cheerful Ma Ling sitting comfortably eating piping hot Chinese pancakes, and by his side, a cooking pot of stew was steaming over a warm fire. The landlord realized his stupidity in thinking that locking up Ma Ling without any food or water would make him give in. He realized that Ma Ling had drawn the food and the fire with his magical paintbrush. Absolutely livid, the landlord ordered his henchmen to grab the magic paintbrush and to kill the boy. When a dozen of landlord's henchmen rushed into the stable, ready to obey the landlord's orders, Ma Ling was nowhere to be found. With a magical paintbrush, Ma Ling had drawn a ladder and escaped through a window that he had drawn. The landlord and his men started to follow Ma Ling up the ladder, but when they had just climbed a few steps, the ladder vanished and they all came down crashing onto the stony ground. The landlord fell first, and the three henchmen fell on the top of the landlord. They could hear Ma Ling outside the stable, having escaped, laughing at them and running away. Unfortunately, after only a few days of freedom, the landlord's henchmen had successfully followed Ma Ling's tracks and recaptured him. This time, before Ma Ling was locked up, his paintbrush was taken away and given to the landlord. The landlord was extremely excited about having the paintbrush in his own hands. Unfortunately, after only a few days of freedom, the landlord's henchmen had successfully followed Ma Ling's tracks and recaptured him. This time, before Ma Ling was locked up, his paintbrush was taken away and given to the landlord. The landlord was extremely excited about having the paintbrush in his possession. Now he held the means of getting all that he ever dreamt of. The landlord started painting the mountain of gold that Ma Ling had refused to paint for him. Then he drew another and another, on and on, painting one golden mountain on the top of another, until, to his dismay, he noticed that the sparkling golden mountains did not remain sparkling for very long. They were all turning into piles of ash. Undeterred, the landlord decided to paint gold bricks this time. He painted each gold brick one by one. Deciding that the gold bricks were too small, he drew a very big one, a long gold brick that would fill the length of the whole room. However, the size of the gold bricks made no difference. The result was the same as before. All the shining golden bricks turned into ash. The landlord, realizing that he could not use the brush with the same success as Ma Ling, ordered his henchmen to bring Ma Ling to him. The landlord had not given up the idea of persuading Ma Ling to paint a mountain of gold for him. This time, using very kind, gentle and persuasive words, he told Ma Ling that if he would just paint a golden mountain for him, he would set him free. As Ma Ling wanted his paintbrush back, he pretended to agree to the landlord's demands. The now very happy landlord gave the magic paintbrush back to Ma Ling, asking him in his silky voice, "Can you please be kind enough to first draw a tree that blossomed golden flowers and bore golden fruits?" Ma Ling raised his brush and waved it to the left and right. A beautiful, brilliantly shining ocean without a single ripple, like an endless jade mirror, appeared before the landlord. The landlord was confused and asked Ma Ling, "I wanted you to draw a golden tree, but you have painted me an ocean." Ma Ling drew an island in the middle of the ocean, and on the island a big tall tree. Ma Ling asked, "Is this not the golden tree you wished for?" The landlord started laughing. "Ha ha 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 ha! Quick, quick, draw me a boat, Ma Ling. I want to reach that golden tree." So Ma Ling painted a wooden boat, big enough for the landlord and all his henchmen to board. As the boat slowly started out towards the island, the landlord shouted, "Faster! Faster!" Ma Ling began to paint a few small ripples on the water and a few broad strokes in the sky. Immediately, wind started to blow. The sails opened and the boat was urged forward toward the island. "More wind! More wind!" the landlord demanded. With his paintbrush, Ma Ling added more brush strokes to the sky. The wind became stronger and the sails of the boat became fully extended. The boat began sailing ahead at full speed. The wind made the waves grow bigger and bigger. The boat began to toss about uncontrollably and dangerously. The landlord realized that if this wind continued, the boat would be in real danger of sinking. Now very frightened, the landlord waved his hands at Ma Ling, signaling him to stop. He cried out, "Enough, enough, Ma Ling! Stop the wind!" Ma Ling was a very kind-hearted person. Even though the greedy landlord had been very unkind to him, Ma Ling wanted to give the landlord a second chance. He stopped the wind. In the calm, Ma Ling asked the landlord, "Is this all that you want? I can draw you anything and everything you're desperate for. A golden mountain, a golden city just for you. But if I had more wind, what would happen? All that you really want, all the gold that you wish for, will not save you, will it?" At this moment, the landlord realized how precious life is. He could only have the joy of his possessions if he was alive. In that storm, he could have lost everything, his fortune and his life. In that instant, he felt greatly ashamed about his colossal desire for money and what he had done to Ma Ling. Feeling both frightened and ashamed, the landlord said, "Please forgive me, Ma Ling. I now realize my mistake. I do not want riches. Please just take us all back home." Ma Ling could see that the landlord had realized his mistakes, and so he started to paint a calm sea for the landlord and his men to return home. When they were all safely ashore, the landlord cried tears of relief. He held out his arm towards Ma Ling, asking him to accept his apologies for his bad attitude and behavior. Ma Ling, holding landlord's hands in his, accepted his apology. The landlord invited Ma Ling to stay with him at his home for a few days. Indeed, this was to be the start of a good friendship between the two of them. The landlord wanted to share his fortune with Ma Ling so that Ma Ling could buy many things. Ma Ling refused the landlord's offer, saying, "I have my paintbrush, and that is more than enough for me. If you want to share your money, please use it to do good deeds for those who are in real great need." The landlord promised Ma Ling that he would help all the poor and needy people who came to him. After a few days, in spite of the landlord's repeated requests, Ma Ling left the landlord's house. The story of Ma Ling and his magic paintbrush spread far and wide. But nobody knows exactly where Ma Ling went. Some say he went southwest to his hometown. Others say that he traveled to many places and that wherever he went, he used his magic paintbrush to provide warmth, shelter, food, and clean drinking water to anyone he found in such great need.